Hello again, and welcome back to our third webinar in our business support series for early years providers. As I say, this is the third webinar in the series. So if you haven't yet had an opportunity to view webinar number 1, which is focused on business planning, and webinar number 2, which is focused on business and financial budgeting, then I really would recommend that you do so before you view this particular webinar, because you'll find that this makes a lot more sense if you've looked at the ones that come before. But anyway, my name is Jacqui Burke, and my business Flourishing People specialises in providing business and management training for the early years and childcare sector. And I'm also the author of Building Your Early Years business, which you'll find it actually contains a lot of the principles that I'm covering in this webinar. So in today's webinar, we're going to be focused on managing business and financial performance. So as I say, based on what we covered in webinar number 1, where we looked at creating a business plan, and where in webinar number 2, we looked at creating a financial forecast. The next step, I suppose, in the process is to ask the question, well, once we've done all of that work, how do we use those tools on a day-to-day basis in order to improve the performance and manage the performance of our setting? So that's our focus for today. So the aim of this really is to provide you with a bit of a framework which will help you to do that on a day-to-day basis, and ensure that you are managing business and financial information really efficiently. And this is something obviously that in any business, we need to focus on doing. So this is a little bit of a reminder for those of you who have watched the previous webinars, and maybe new for those of you that haven't done. I always refer to a business plan as being your business sat-nav. So the purpose of a business plan, you'll remember, is to provide us with something that will guide us on our journey through our early years business, in just the same way that a sat-nav will provide you guidance when you are undertaking a journey in your car. So that's why I find it a really useful analogy. You know, all the things we've talked about previously about having a sat-nav that you put your objectives in terms of where you're trying to get to, and it works out the best route for you, and all those kind of things, very, very much like a car sat-nav. So we're going to move on from the sat-nav today, and we're going to use another driving analogy to help us to think about how we actually manage our performance once we've actually put our sat-nav in place, once we've put our business plan in place. And the analogy I'm going to use here is that of a car dashboard. So if you'd like to think about a car dashboard for a moment and think about what that does for you. While you're in your car driving along, you've got a dashboard in front of you that covers all sorts of information. So there's lots of different dials and little lights and things of that sort, all on your dashboard. And what they do for you is that while you are on your journey, they tell you how your vehicle is performing, and they tell you that information in lots of different ways. So there are lots of different ways of understanding how your vehicle is performing. It can tell you your speed, and it can tell you your revs, and it can tell you whether you've got enough fuel, and what your temperature is, and all of those kind of things. So it will tell you while you're driving along how your vehicle is performing. And it's significant that your dashboard does that for you while you're driving along. You don't have to stop to find out that information. It's there available to you while you are traveling. And of course, in order to make that work, it's really important that when a dashboard is designed by the car manufacturers, they design it so that everything is in one place. It's all at a glance, because obviously it would be very dangerous if while you're driving along, you had to check your speed up there somewhere and take your eyes off the road, or you had to look down there for some information. So it's absolutely essential that a dashboard is really designed very, very efficiently so that you can, at a glance, while you're still traveling, actually see how your vehicle is performing. Well, guess what? The same is true when we talk about a business dashboard. So when we're designing a dashboard for your early years business, we need to follow the same principles as the people that design car dashboards. So first of all, we need to make sure that everything is pulled together in one place. It's really not an efficient use of time if you have to, in order to work out how the business is performing, go here for that piece of information and there for that piece of information. It takes your eye off the ball in terms of your business journey, and it means that things can very often get overlooked, which is not helpful. So we need everything in one place so that you can, at a glance, see very quickly and efficiently how the business is performing while you are still undertaking your day-to-day activity. So it needs to provide us with that instant snapshot of your current performance in just the same way that your dashboard on your car tells you what is happening right now. And that needs to be current and correct and up to date. But like your car dashboard, it also needs to give you predictions about your likely future performance. So your dashboard these days in your car is very clever, and it will tell you little warnings when you're likely to run out of fuel. Mine has a little, you ask it to tell me how many miles I've got left before I need to fill up, and what my average speed is looking like, and what my miles per gallon, and all that kind of stuff. So it can give predictions about your likely future performance, and your business dashboard needs to do that too. And in your car dashboard, you've got all sorts of little lights that come on, haven't you? So you have amber lights, which alert you to a possible problem. And then an amber light, when it comes on, is just saying to you, there's something going on here with your vehicle that you might want to just have a little look at when you've got a chance to stop somewhere and check it out. And in exactly the same way, we need our car dashboard to alert us when things are not going quite as they should be, when things are not going to plan, when there's possibly a negative trend starting to emerge, or there's possibly a problem building up for the future. And then finally, your car dashboard also has red lights. And we all know, don't we, that if a red light comes on, we kind of go, oh my goodness. And usually we stop straight away. And usually we have to get the manual out of the glove compartment, don't we, at that stage, and actually check what does it mean when there's a red light like this that comes up. And very often it says, do not drive your vehicle any further until you've corrected this problem, or until it's been checked by a qualified mechanic. So our red alerts are those that kind of tell us if we need to be taking immediate action. There is a serious problem. And again, we need our business dashboard to give us those red alerts if there is a serious problem that we need to take action over before it actually before it damages the whole engine, if you like. Okay, so that's the idea of designing a dashboard for your early years business. So I'm going to just give a reminder of how we go about building all of this up. And from our previous webinar, you'll remember that we used a SWOT analysis as the basis for pulling together a lot of information about how our business is performing. We used it previously as part of our business plan, and this is a part of the East Sussex business plan template, which early years providers are encouraged to complete, and which you will find on the C-Zone. So you complete your SWOT analysis not back of an envelope, you know, just off the top of your head, but by doing some proper analysis of the business, so that you're basing your SWOT analysis on the facts about what's happening. So we looked in our first workshop, our first webinar, at how you complete what we call a 7S analysis, which will help you to determine the strengths and weaknesses of your early years business. We looked at how to undertake a pestle analysis, which helps you to understand what's going on in the world around you and how prepared your business is to take advantage of current and future opportunities and threats. We looked at financial forecasting and doing your break-even calculation and your cash flow forecasting in webinar number 2 to ensure that you have a really good understanding of whether you are in a strong or a weak financial position. And we looked at some other tools around things like doing some market research and some analysis of your stakeholders. And having built all of that into your SWOT analysis, what comes out of that is what I call a risk register. And a risk register is really your summary of your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and then turning that into a plan that says, what do we need to be doing now in order to build on our strengths, to eliminate our weaknesses, to take advantage of future opportunities, and to minimize the negative impact of any threats. So that's where we got to before. And then building your early years business dashboard is what falls out of the bottom of that. So once you've actually created your risk register, where you've summarized all those key things that the business needs to focus attention on in order to address those strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, then what comes next is obviously a way of actually monitoring your progress in terms of managing those things, in terms of managing what you've put into your risk register. And that's what the early years business dashboard will do for you. So here is an idea of what it might actually look like based on a SWOT that you might have conducted for your particular setting. So I'm imagining that my setting has created a SWOT analysis, and we've identified that there are some financial risks that we need to keep an eye on. There are some operational issues that we need to keep an eye on. There are some regulatory things that might concern us. There's a risk of cybersecurity. There might be risks associated with our customers, our parents, and there might be physical risks in terms of our premises. I've got 6 headings here. You don't have to have 6. You may have fewer, or you may have a few more. I wouldn't have too many if I were you, maybe 8 as the most. Otherwise it gets very confusing. And your headings may be different from mine. I've just imagined for a particular business, this is what the headings would be, but you may actually determine that you've got other serious risks that you need to focus on. And you'll see within each of these that I've just put some examples of what might come under each of those headings. So under the financial category, you may have concerns, having done your cash flow forecast, that actually your cash flow isn't looking very healthy, that you're looking like you might run out of money and not have enough money to pay your bills at certain times in the year. Or it may be that you've done your analysis and you can see that actually parent debt is starting to become a problem, that we've got a number of parents who are not paying their bills, and that could become a serious problem for us. Under operational risks, it could include things like just human error, staff making mistakes. Is that something that's prevalent in your setting? Or systems breaking down? You know, if you're a setting that's now very heavily reliant on your IT systems to run things, you know, what happens if that goes wrong? What happens if suddenly your system corrupts and you can't access any of your information. And I've worked with one or two businesses where they've had that experience, and it can be quite catastrophic. Or operational risks can also include things like staffing problems. You know, are you having difficulty recruiting enough staff? Are you having difficulty retaining your staff? Is there an issue with staff morale? So those things would all come under the heading of operational risks. Under the heading of regulatory risks, there might be things like concerns that you might be failing to keep on top of changes to the law and changes to regulations, so that you may suddenly find that you're breaching regulation or you're breaking the law because you haven't made up-to-date changes. And you know, laws and regulations change all the time, as we know, and we need a good mechanism of keeping up to date with all that sort of thing. Or it might just be that you perhaps suspect that you're not really fully compliant with some existing laws and regulations. You know, is your health and safety training up to date? Is your safeguarding training up to date? Those sort of things. And then cybersecurity. Well, we've found, particularly over the last couple of years, as we've been working through COVID restrictions, that we are increasingly operating online. We've largely had no choice about that. Circumstances have forced us to do that. So, for example, all of our training is online these days, or a lot of it. You know, I would be doing this sort of thing face to face with people years ago, but tend to be delivering online now. Government requires us to engage with them online. So HM customers and excise, we have to do all our returns electronically. Engaging with the government funding portals, obviously that's all electronic, doing all your returns to your local authority, etc. As well as just day-to-day contact with parents and other organisations, which increasingly is using the internet to do that. And of course, as soon as we are doing things online, that opens us up to risks. We know there are a lot of unsavoury people around who have nothing better to do in their lives than hack and phish and scam people online. So it's really important that we manage those risks really well to protect our business and to protect the sensitive personal data that we have responsibility for holding. So we've got financial risks there as part of that. We've got GDPR risks in terms of personal data about families and staff and children. Okay, so we've got all of that to think about. Under customer risks, it may be that you've done a bit of research and looked at your customers, and you've come to the conclusion that you're struggling to attract new customers, perhaps because your reputation isn't very good in your local area, or perhaps you're attracting maybe the wrong sort of customers, you know, attracting customers that are less likely to pay their bills, and perhaps that's linked to the problem that I mentioned previously. Or maybe just in terms of profiling the mixture of your customers, you've recognized that you need perhaps more 30 hours customers or more 2-year-olds, for example, in order to balance out the profile of families and children within your setting. And then finally, physical risks. That might include things like, you know, what would happen if your building was damaged and became inaccessible? So have you got, for example, a business continuity plan in place that will enable you to immediately get up and running again, perhaps in another location, if, for example, there was a glass explosion and you couldn't get back into your premises? And what happens when physical assets break down or are damaged? If you had some vandalism, or if there were a fire that caused some damage or something of that sort. So those are the kind of things that you might want to incorporate into your early years business dashboards. But everybody's going to be different, because it depends on having done that SWOT analysis to start with, and then completing your risk analysis, your risk register, falling out of the bottom of your SWOT analysis. So that this really does follow a process, hence why I've encouraged you to watch the webinars sequentially. So once you've populated your early years dashboard with lots of information, the thing to do then is to set yourself some goals, some targets, or what I call some key performance indicators, some measures of how you want each of those things to improve, how you want them to look at some point in the future. And this is what it might look like. Sorry, my slide's taking a little bit of time to transition. Okay, so our key performance indicators, when we put those together, need to be SMART. And this is a mnemonic that we've covered previously in the other webinars. So you need to make sure that these are very smart, they're specific, they're measurable, make sure that they're achievable and realistic, and make sure that they're time bound. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you an example of what an early years business dashboard might look like with SMART KPIs included. And here's what it might look like. So you'll see that I've picked up those same headings, those same 6 headings. And in my dashboard, I've also picked up each of the topics that I highlighted on the previous slide. And what I've done with each of those topics is I've now set myself a target or a key performance indicator that says, this is what I'm aiming for in terms of making sure that I properly manage that particular element. So I'm just going to pick a couple of these just to kind of give you an example. So under cash flow, what we've said as a key performance indicator is that our cash flow should show every month ends with a positive cash balance in the bank. So that's what we want to happen. Okay, so that we don't ever get into a position where we end the month and we've run out of money or we're in debt. Okay, so that's how we set our targets. So you'll see there it's nice and smart. So it's very clear what we're measuring. It's measurable. So we know that we want to see a positive cash balance. Okay, so that's very clear. It's very measurable. We need to see a plus number at the end. And we know it's time bound because we're going to check this every single month on the last day of the month to make sure that that's the case. Let's pick another one, shall we? So let's pick poor reputation under customer risks. So here our key performance indicator says our social media accounts are actively used with at least one positive message being shared every day. Okay, so this is a way of enhancing reputation. Social media can be extremely effective in that. So here we've been very specific. We could be more specific and say it will be our Facebook and our link and our Instagram account, for example. But we've been specific. It's our social media accounts. We've made it measurable by saying, rather than just saying we make sure they're actively used, we've said what we're actually expecting is we're going to put a positive story on, a positive post on every day. So it's very measurable and can easily be checked, and it's time bound because it's every day that we're going to do that. Okay, so does that give you an idea, hopefully, of how that all fits together? So once we've actually constructed our early years business dashboard and put our SMART key performance indicators in there, what do we do then? Well, the next thing that we do is we make sure that we use this regularly in our business management meetings. So that might be your senior management meetings. It might be meetings of your committee or your governors. It might be a meeting that the owner of the setting has with the setting managers. So whatever it looks like within your setting, it's that group of people that need to be reviewing this on a regular basis. So how do you do that? Well, you ask 4 very simple questions. For each part of your dashboard, you ask, what are the key things you need to keep an eye on that will tell you how this aspect of your business is performing? Second question then is, what are the key documents or records that you need to consult that will tell you that will give you the answer to question number 1? Question number 3 is then, how frequently do you need to monitor this aspect? Do you need to look at it every day, every week, every month, once a term, once a year? Because different things you'll need to monitor with different frequencies. And then question 4, once you've looked at all of that, what action do you need to take? So this is like when if your orange light comes on your dashboard. Okay, so 4 very simple questions, and those are your key questions that you need to ask whenever you're looking at your dashboard. So let's work through an example of how this actually works in practice. So I'm going to take that very first key performance indicator that we've got on our dashboard there. So you'll remember this is about our financial forecast showing that every month ends with a positive cash balance in the bank. So let's work through our questions. So what are the key things that you need to keep an eye on that will tell you how this aspect of our business is performing? Well, we obviously need to look at how we're actually doing in terms of our income and our expenditure, how much we're earning and how much we're spending. And we need to be comparing that with our forecast figures. So having done our forecast, our financial forecast, our cash flow forecast, which we covered in webinar 2, we're going to get that out every month, and we're going to look at, this is where we said we should be this month in terms of income and expenditure. What have we actually seen to be the case? So question number 2, what are the key documents or records that you need to consult? Well, obviously, I've just mentioned you need to consult your financial forecast to see what we predicted, what we said we would be doing this month. But also you need to look at your actual bank statements or whatever other mechanism you use for actually monitoring what money has come in and what money have we paid out. And you're going to compare the two and see whether they marry up or whether there's a variance, whether there's a difference. And how often are you going to do that? Well, you're probably going to do that monthly. We get a monthly bank statement, don't we? And we've done a monthly forecast. So that's sensible. And then what actions are we going to take? So there are a few actions we could take. So first of all, if we see a variance, a difference, in other words, between what we predicted in our forecast and what actually happened, we want to find out why, what happened, what made the difference. And variances can be both positive or negative. So it could be that we've earned more money than we expected to. So we want to find out, and we go, oh, actually, yeah, our marketing was really successful and we've got 4 more children than we'd expected to have at this point in the year. So that's really great. Or, oh, this family decided to take some additional hours from us. So that's really great. Or, of course, a variance can be negative. So it could be we're looking at it and thinking, oh, my goodness, we're suddenly spending a lot more on our electricity bill than we'd forecast, because we all know what's happened to electricity prices. Or, golly gosh, we are finding we are spending a lot more money on our food shopping. Okay, so we find out what we investigate, we make it a bit more detailed and find out what's actually going on. Once we've done that, we then need to take action to either increase our income or reduce our expenditure before that becomes a trend that could happen throughout the year and then put us in the red at the end of the year. So we need to take some swift action. What we should also do is update our forecast for the rest of the year if things have changed. So if, for example, we've suddenly found that our rent has been increased, or we suddenly find that our electric bill has gone up considerably, we don't just show that as being different for this month, because obviously that's going to carry on all the way through the year. So what we need to do is go back to our forecast and update our forecast for all the rest of the months of this year, so we can see what impact that change will have on every month during the year. Same is true for a positive. If we suddenly find we've got 4 more children and some families that are taking additional hours, we can forecast that forward all the way through the year and see what impact that will have on the whole year and every month within the year. Okay. And then we also need to make sure that we've got good financial management systems in place to enable us to keep on top of all of that information really efficiently. Okay, so I hope that's helpful and very, very straightforward. All you need to remember is keep asking those 4 key questions. So I'm going to say a little bit now just about that last bullet point, about good financial management systems, and just think a little bit about what does that look like in practice. And this is a bit of a checklist for you, if you like, in terms of making sure that in your own setting, your financial management systems are as they should be. So the first thing to say is there should be a system. As you know, kind of stating the obvious really, but there should be a system. It shouldn't be a big mess, a big chaos, like in my photograph here. So make sure you've set yourself up a system for managing your finances that you know you will stick to. So don't let somebody else dictate this is how you've got to do it. This is the way to do it. Find a way that works for you, for your routines, for your business, that you know you will be able to stick to. And a part of that is about allocating a regular time to deal with financial administration, because without doing so, it just piles up and it ends up looking like that picture there, which is just, you know, you'd look at that, wouldn't you? And you'd just go, where do I start? And we end up getting in a real mess then. So it's up to you how you do it. You could do it every week. You could do it every month. But the important thing is that it's a regular system that you personally can commit to. When I started my business, I found that it was a Sunday afternoon for me when I was very, very busy, you know, just starting the business and getting things running. Literally, I had to allocate an hour every Sunday afternoon just to sit down and kind of update my spreadsheets and update all my records. And then I did the bigger piece of work, the month-end work I did during the working day. But that was the only way I could make it work for me at that time. Make sure you file your records logically and in order. And that's really important so that they can be retrieved if need be. And that's retrieved by you and also retrieved if somebody else asks for them, such as the taxman. And again, it doesn't matter how you do that. So in years gone by, my financial records were all filed in placky folders. So I'd have one that was labelled expenses and one that was labelled invoices and one that was etc., etc. That's absolutely fine. If your business is simple enough to run it that way. Increasingly over the years, I've made efforts to become paperless in my own office environment and have done away with all that paper. So now it's files on my computer, and all of those things actually sit in files, and anything that comes in paper, I just scan and save it within those folders. So again, whatever way you do it, doesn't matter, so long as it works for you. Make regular checks, especially in relation to cash. So if you are a business that still handles cash, either because you have some customers who still pay you in cash, or if you have a petty cash arrangement within your setting, be very, very careful with that, because cash is something that can go missing quite easily. And also cash is something that often doesn't get accounted for properly. So if a business has any dealings going on in cash, particularly if any of your invoices are paid in cash, that's something that the taxman has particular concerns around, because there are lots of businesses, as we know, that take cash and the money goes straight in their pocket and doesn't go through the books. So cash-based businesses are more inclined to be investigated by the taxman than those businesses that transact everything visibly electronically. And it's really sensible, you don't have to, but it's really sensible to use computerized records. I do still know one or two very, very tiny settings that tend to manage things still on a, in a notebook with a pen, but it's very difficult to actually properly keep track of that and to make changes as things change throughout the year. And also that's prone to a lot more human error. So it doesn't have to be one of these snazzy, bespoke computerized systems that you use, although you're very welcome to use things like that. And your accountant, I'm sure, can recommend them to you, if they have a preferred system. My business is very small, so I've always run everything on Excel. I created my own Excel spreadsheets. They work for me. They're absolutely tailored to my business. And in 20 odd years, I've never seen a need to change to anything different. So that's absolutely fine if that's how you choose to do it. But having computerized records will save you a lot of time in the long run. It will enable you to much more easily add, delete, amend data, and also to share data with other people. It enables you to recalculate your costs when you make a change, like when your electric's gone up. And it allows you to much more easily to file your government tax returns, which are obviously all electronic, and also to identify when payments are overdue. So lots of big advantages to managing your finances electronically. Okay, so that's about having a system. The other element that I'd like to say a bit about is security. So making sure that your financial management information is secure. So again, a little bit of a checklist here. Some of these things are very obvious, but I'm going to say them anyway. Make sure you use strong passwords and don't share the password in with too many people. So very often now, strong passwords, you've got lots of systems that you can use that create a very random kind of strong password for you. I use one. I happen to be an Apple user, so Apple, every time I create a new account with anything, it creates a strong password for me, and that's saved across all my devices so that I can get back into things without having to remember the password. So you might use a system that creates a strong random password for you, but avoid using passwords like password or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or your setting name, or your surname, or your child's name, or your dog's name, because they're the really obvious things that hackers manage to get into. All they've got to do is look at people's social media accounts and they kind of find all that information out about us. So it's not difficult for them these days to build up enough of a picture to guess our passwords. And statistically, a very high number of people still have a password as their password, and particularly people that get hacked. The issue about keeping passwords safe is important as well. And that's not just about not sharing it with too many people deliberately, but be careful where you put it. I have walked into so many settings where the password is on a post-it note underneath their keyboard, or the password is in the top drawer of their desk, or the password is on the notice board. And I've even had some experiences where I've been stood outside a setting and glanced in the window of the office, and you can see the notice board from outside, and there's the post-it note that says this week's password is, and this week's security code for the front door is. So just be very conscious of where you're putting that kind of information. Make sure that you protect your financial information from internet fraud, scams, and phishers and hackers and viruses and all that kind of things by having really good firewalls and virus protection software, and making sure that you set them automatically to update. The updates are made by those computer programs when they discover a new risk. So those updates are there to protect you from new risks that have just come about. So make sure you set them to automatically update. Make sure that you shred any sensitive documents before you recycle them. And ideally, one of those kind of cross-thread kind of shredders is the optimum to use. Keep an electronic backup and keep it regularly. Ideally, again, this should be automated. So if you can buy in a system that automatically creates a backup for you, it's certainly every day. But I have mine set to update the backup every couple of hours, and make sure that if you do keep a copy off-site, an electronic one, that you do test that it's retrievable. Because if all your systems go down and disappear and you suddenly need to retrieve your information and the company turns around to you and says, yes, we can get that back to you within 10 days, that's not really very helpful. So a bit like doing your fire drill, do a test drill. How easy is it to get back all your financial data if your systems in your setting all went down? It's a good idea as well to keep paper copies of some of your really critical information and to keep that information off-site. So off-site is important. Again, I've had lots of conversations in settings where they've gone, oh yes, we do a backup of all our computers every day. It's all backed up onto this portable hard drive here. And I go, oh, that's fantastic, well done. And where does that live? Oh, that lives in this drawer here and the drawer's locked, so that's okay. Yeah, but what happens if the building burns down? Then you've lost your computers and you've lost your backup as well. So always keep your backups, a copy of your backups off-site as well, in case a catastrophe happens to your building. It might not be that it's burnt down. It might just be that, you know, there's a gas leak and you can't actually get back into your building for a few days or something like that. But at least you've got that information off-site. And then finally, make sure that you store all your financial records, including all your supporting information and documentation. So actual paper stuff, receipts and things like that. Store them in a fireproof box. Remember that in the Inland Revenue and Customs expect you to keep, as a business, the current year's information and the previous 6 years. The reason that's important is because if they come and investigate you, they can ask for any of those years that they want. They will at random say, we want to see that particular year, and you need to be able to provide all your information and supporting evidence for that year. The reason I stress a fireproof box is this. I worked with one setting a few years ago, and they were very organized, and they filed all their previous years in those cardboard bankers boxes that you can buy, and you make them up, and they had those nicely filed, all perfectly in order, and they stored those in the loft that they had above the garage that was adjacent to their building. And along came Revenue and Customs, knocked on the door. Hello, we'd like to come and investigate you. And we would like to see your records for 2016 and 2019, for example. And the setting manager was all quite smug about that. Said, yes, no problem at all. We will just go and retrieve all our information. And went into the loft and brought the relevant boxes down and opened the boxes, and squirrels. So for however many years those boxes had been sat up in their loft, being kept safe for the taxman to look at, the squirrels had made lovely nests in there, and all they had was 6 boxes of shredded paper. Now, unfortunately, what happens in that situation is the taxman does not give you the benefit of the doubt. They will estimate what they think your records should say. So they will estimate your earnings and estimate your expenditure. And they usually estimate in their favour rather than your favour. For that particular setting, not only did they receive a fine for not being able to provide their financial information, but it cost them around £40,000 in additional tax. So let that be a warning to you. Fireproof boxes, really important. Okay, so all of that helps you manage your business and also helps you to keep the taxman happy. So it's a double tick in the box. So let's move on and just finish talking a little bit about our dashboard, our early years business dashboard, and what we do with it. So in order to use this kind of lights system like we have on our car, we need to actually think about amber lights and red lights, which will tell us when we need to take action. And this is what we call a RAG rating, which simply stands for red, amber and green, or in other words, a traffic light system. So we all know, back in the car again, we all know how traffic lights work. We get a green light that says go, everything's safe. We have an amber light that says get ready, but just kind of keep an eye on things. And we have a red light that says stop. So the same thing applies here. A green light means this aspect of our business performance is being met. It's absolutely fine, or perhaps it's even doing better than we expected. So that's a big thumbs up and says, carry on, it's all going really well. An amber light means, might be a problem coming up here, just keep an eye on things. Or maybe there's a bit of a backward trend starting. We might need to take some corrective action to get things back to green again. So it's a little bit of a warning, like in your car. And a red light is that big warning that says, stop, major problem, you need to take some corrective action now because performance to this aspect of your business is not being met. So this is how we manage our business dashboard, and this is what it looks like once we have RAG rated our business dashboard. Okay, so it's our same dashboard that we looked at previously, the same key performance indicators that we populated it with before. And all I've done now is I've imagined that we've had a meeting this particular month, and we've looked at each of those elements by asking our 4 key questions. And as a result of that, when we've got to question 4, what actions do we need to take? We've determined that some of the things don't need any action at the moment because they're all going really well. So they're on green. A green is, we're managing our staff absence really well now and ensuring that our ratios are being met all the time. So that's a green, that's fantastic. We've got some that are an amber. So interestingly, our cash flow one that we were looking at before, that's maybe kind of looking a bit uncertain because we've had that increase in our electric bill and increase in our rent. So we're not too sure how that's going to pan out for the rest of the year. And then we've got a few that we've identified now that are on red. Let's take, for example, poor reputation. Well, we said we wanted to actively use our social media accounts and put a message on every day. And that just hasn't been happening because whoever's meant to be doing that just hasn't had the time and hasn't got round to it. So actually our reputation, we're not doing anything to enhance that at the moment. Okay, so that's what it might look like once we've RAG rated it. And then having RAG rated it, what we can then do is take action. So what we will do is for our green ones, we'll congratulate ourselves, we'll congratulate our staff, thank them for all the work that they're doing and carry on. For our amber ones, we will plan what are our next steps between now and when we next review our information on our dashboard, which might be next week or next month. And for our red ones, we need to have a serious meeting about how we deal with those, and we need to put some action into place straight away to address those serious problems. Okay, so that brings us to an end of today's webinar. So let me just say a little bit about some next steps. So I hope that what you will do is go onto the East Sussex C-Zone and check out the business plan template, and you'll see that that has the section in it all about creating your SWOT analysis and lots of other things as well. And please, if you haven't done so already, have a go at creating a SWOT analysis for your business and the register, the risk register that comes out of that. And then using that, have a go at creating your early years business dashboard, following the kind of template idea that I've looked at with you today. So identify those key elements that you need to monitor and report on regularly with your leadership team, and add to one final thing to say, add to your regular management agendas those 4 key questions when you review your early years business dashboard on a regular basis. Okay, so finally, just to mention, if you have missed them, do come back and have a look at the previous webinars in the series. So that's the business planning one and the financial forecasting and budgeting. It will help today's webinar to make a lot more sense to you. Just to thank you for joining me today. And I've been Jacqui Burke from Flourishing People. So bye for now.